So on the previous video on the Jetta, we took out all the interior and did the floor patching, which will be mainly on the website in the form of pictures. We have yet to post that. We have a bunch of pictures and we'll do a full write-up on what we did, how we did it. And so now we're to the point of trying to put in the new floor insulation and the new carpet from the other car, and then the full leather seat interior, and piece everything back together. So we're mainly going to do this as a time lapse from this point. Maybe add some extra images on the side, but for the most part you can catch the video on the website. Okay, so we just thought we would show you this little bit. We hadn't removed the original cloth seat backs yet, so we just thought we'd show you how you do that. It's not the most intuitive thing, I guess, ever. You do require some kind of a slot screwdriver. This is a decent size one. And down in the latch here, I don't know if you can see, there's this lighter colored piece and then the darker colored peg that's actually part of the seat. So my understanding is all you have to do is pry this back out of the way, and then now you should be able to lift the seat, minus the carpet, lift the seat out, and then it just slides out of the middle section like that. So you can see now this part here, it's just like a door latch basically. This part rockers. When you put the new seat in, you push down and it'll swing this back around, and it goes around the pin on the seat. Alright, so for the right half of the back seat, the seatbelt for the center passenger actually is bolted to the floor at the back, which obviously makes sense. It has to be anchored somehow. So it's a 17mm head, and you'll need a short extension just so you're not bashing your knuckles. And depending on what condition your car is in, as far as rust goes, it should be relatively easy to undo. I'm not sure if this bolt actually goes out the bottom and is exposed or not, but if it is, that will certainly make it harder to undo. Keep the bolt. I believe our leather seats don't have any bolts in them, so we'll just keep this here for now. Just thread it back in a couple of threads, maybe. Okay. now we're going to start reinstalling our center console components. On these cars, the front console is a little bit complicated, so we've got the Bentley service manual open to the right page, and we're just going to try and follow it step by step. We're just as new to this as the viewers would be. Taking it apart wasn't too bad, but sometimes putting it back together, getting everything to fit is challenging. They don't make it easy for you, so we're going to follow what they say here and see how well we make out.
Alright, so what you want to do first is you want to take the center console. You want to carefully, very gently, place it over the shifter knob, like so. Now in the manual they actually recommend moving the shifter head. Perfectly see why.
It's just a problem because the shift knob isn't just threaded on or anything, it's actually a one-time squeeze clip, so to undo that one then you have to have a new clip, so we're going to try to avoid that.
So now we have it sort of in place here. So now so the two screws, which you can't see on the camera, are basically at the very front of the center console. And they tie into a bracket that is located behind the steel, basically the connection between the frame and the dashboard.
So you have to make sure these two 90-degree plastic brackets underneath the back of the front console go inside the metal that's on the car, otherwise you won't be able to assemble it.
No, do not put those screws in yet. You'll do that when you put in the rest of the console later.
Yeah, I realize we've already... I think we can squeeze this around the shifter. This has to go underneath the console. Right. Those marks are for the metal, so if we can... I think we're actually in the right place now.
Alrighty, so we need two screws, which we probably don't have with us.
Yeah, I brought some screws.
Okay.
Get this one started and then get it. Gee. Okay, so we're going to put the two front screws in first, but we're not going to tighten them all the way. You don't want to tighten any screws all the way tight until you've got everything assembled. Otherwise you might run into a trouble where you need a little bit more movement in one direction or another and you can't get it because you already tightened up the screws.
So now that we've put those screws in, we want to slide the ashtray back in, which is right here.
Yes. So we had all this apart to clean it because there had been many very sticky spills inside here. It was really gross. So this cover lid for the ashtray actually has dowel pegs that go into the little slots. So you just fiddle around with it until you get it in the right place, and then it just pops back in place, and that is the open and close for the ashtray itself. Okay? So, on the bottom of the ashtray there are little hooks and plastic tabs, and there's a metal bar across the bottom of the front console, and those are supposed to hook in and latch So that's the hardest part about this endeavor. Once you've got that done, there's one screw in the middle that you put in to hold it. But the hardest part of this is getting those plastic hooks in the right place, because you can't see what you're doing. Okay, so you just have to hold your mouth the right way. And that's in there like that, and then we got one screw in the middle, right?
Screw that you put in.
One screw in the center of the ashtray that stops everything from moving around. There's these flies that buzz off. That completes the ashtray.
Now you clip in the shifter group.
Okay. There goes, but can't really clean right now. But we can put this thing. I don't know if you actually have to take this little trim piece off to do what we did, but it might make it easier to get the ashtray out. There's not a lot of space to work, so this thing, all you got to do is hook the bottom in. I believe that's all there is to it.
So next, we're going to reinstall the brake handle.
So what we did with this car is it had a regular console to begin with, and what I did is I hunted down one of the GLS consoles that has cup holders in it, and what we found out when we tried to put it back together is that the parking brake handle mounting was actually different. So this block on the bottom here is wider, so I was able to get the arm from the same car that I stole the console from. And so the challenge now is going to be, no matter how close you make the cable pull adjustment, it's going to be different. So you're going to have to mount it and try it and adjust it. You just want to make it the same as what it was before, so that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to plug the parking brake switch in first. It's sometimes hard to get to once the handle is installed. And then, without pinching the wires, try and tuck everything down into position. The wires really cooperate. Regular nut on the front mount. And again, just make it just barely snugged up for now. You don't want to tighten anything final until you've got everything assembled. And already what I should have done before now apparently is hook the cable ends on. Obviously I don't have the old one, do we? A good idea if you are changing handles like we are is to just compare the amount of thread sticking out, the old one to the new one. So yeah, already you can see the new one's got like an inch of thread, the old one's got like a half an inch of thread. So that's going to be something we're going to have to look at pretty much right away. Okay, 8mm, not 10mm. So we're just going to back up the adjustment nut here. Try and get it, like I said before, you can get it close to what the original one was, but in our experience doing other cars, it doesn't matter how close you get it, it's still going to be different. So you kind of have to, like I said before, again, make an adjustment, put it together, and try it, and you can always adjust it further once it's installed. I'm just going to take a guess as to how much this one needs. Like I started before, I'm going to put one nut on the front here, just barely snugged up. Again, nothing tightened until you have everything assembled and you're ready to tighten it up final. So I can put one more on here. This is our armrest bracket. I'm going to put a good new armrest in this car. So it uses those two holes that are existing there, and the special piece in order to use the armrest is a nut extension adapter basically. So it becomes the nut for the left side of the parking brake bracket here, and then that gives you another stud for the armrest bracket to go on top of, and then you just use a regular nut on top of that. So put that in part way. And now there is torque specs in the manual if you have the manual for these. Like I've mentioned in other videos, I've just learned how much force I can put on certain size nuts and bolts with a hand ratchet. But if you want to be super technical, then yeah, all the specs are in the manual for sure, and they're also available, quite readily available online, I'm sure, as well. Something like a parking brake handle, you might say, yeah, that's a super high safety concern, but I mean, it's got 3 nuts holding it down, and there isn't really much vibration in these cars, so you don't have that issue where there's stuff vibrating loose on its own. So I just want to play around with the parking brake here a bit and try and get it like I had it before, which was about 2 clicks and everything was locked up. So, which it seems to be fairly similar actually. There's a little bit of extra play, so I'll take it up a little bit. That was pretty close, my guess. Probably leave it at that. However, if you do need to adjust it in the future, you will likely have to remove this console, which can be problematic. So we can put this armrest bracket on here now. Goes on the stud, down to those speed nuts. We've got somewhere 2 nice original Volkswagen green plated bolts, and 1 nice nut for this side. The bolts I took out of this car originally were starting to corrode, so we took these out of another car that was in really great shape, and it just helps with longevity. I mean, if you're going to put this kind of time into your car, obviously you're intending to drive it for a while or to sell it, in which case you want it to be in good shape, cosmetically and mechanically. So I'll tighten up the armrest brackets here now. And if you are using the torque specs, or you're doing what I'm doing, make sure you're moving around too. You don't want to tighten one of the 3 up all the way and then try and do the other ones. You want to bring it down together evenly so you don't distort anything. Most cars, sometimes it says it in the manual, sometimes it doesn't, but if you have a manual car like this with a hand parking brake or e-brake, whatever you want to call it, Usually you're looking for 3 clicks for the back wheels to be locked up. This one, I think when I first redid the rear brakes, it was more like 2, which is a little too tight. So when you have it apart like this, you have the opportunity to make any final adjustments, make it how you want it to perform. Thing you might run into when you're trying to put the console back in is the parking brake handle won't go high enough, and I honestly don't have an answer for that. I don't know if there's anything in the manual. If it won't go high enough, you either have to just try and fight the console over it, or yeah, you can't disassemble it and then put the console on. So maybe it's better to have 4 or 5 clicks instead of 3 clicks, but we'll try it at 3 and see how it goes. So we're going to take a little break to clean up our console, and we'll come back and install it.